All right, welcome to the show.
Welcome, everybody.
All right, so I'm going to queue up our little slideshow for the night. So, welcome to Red Pill University. Tonight is all about the sexual marketplace.
Mhm.
Now, stay with us because we've got to really crunch the numbers, and it's going to be a lot of academic talk, but this is the foundation and framework for what's going to come up in the subsequent episodes with the sexual market value and how to improve it. So, again, just bear with us 1 second here. We're going to get through this. All right,
Yeah.
so tonight we're going to define the sexual marketplace. We're going to talk about fantasy versus reality, the bell curve model, and some hidden realities of the dating paradigm. So right off the bat, so what is the sexual marketplace? This is, Rolo's written stuff about this. I've written stuff about this. Bring up the like right there in the YouTube description has a pretty good definition. It is the let me put what I quote here. The sexual marketplace is what we've come to describe the dating market in which men seek to acquire sex from women, typically in exchange for resources such as time, gifts, money, status by association, attention, validation, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. Definition right here is not queuing. Why is it not queuing? Oh, there we go. So it's, again, the framework of social economics is applied to sexual dynamics. It's more of an academic term. And this all goes back to Gary Becker, who was a social economist, a demographist, and sociologist. And he kind of was an intersection of sociology and economics. He wrote 2 really good books on it, Human Capital, and I think it was Human Capital, and Social Economics. I got the link to one of those down below. And then Roy Baumeister kind of followed up on this with his works, and it is fundamental to our community and understanding the sexual marketplace as it really is in terms of sexual economics. Do you have any contribution or any comments on this? We talked before the show a little bit. Got notes over here.
Yeah, no, you're good. So the sexual marketplace piece, this goes to the core of the red pill. Rollo tweeted, I don't know how long ago, but I saw one of his tweets that said that he was correcting somebody online about what the red pill was, because it's come up, I guess, in memes in recent conversation. And he made the point that the red pill has always been about guys getting together to understand intersexual dynamics and apply it to their life, apply it to their interactions to get pretty much what they wanted out of their life. And so we talked in the first episode of the Red Pill University about exactly what the red pill is about, and this is the core of it. It
really is
really understanding. This is all about understanding the landscape. So you're not going to hear in this episode, you're not going to hear a lot of like, this one time I did this thing and it worked for me. It's not a ton of practical pieces here, but the most important pieces to come will have underpinnings from all of this, as Joe said.
Yeah, this is very much the framework of what we're going to be, that everything kind of rides upon. Let's see, we got the thing. Okay, so we've got talking a little bit more about Baumeister, his work. So a heterosexual community can be analyzed as a marketplace in which men seek to acquire sex from women in exchange for resources, which I kind of just added to a little bit and with the in the description down below. Societies will endow female sexuality, but not male sexuality, with value. And we see this all the time. This is cross-cultural for the most part. So men's sexuality has very little value, women's does. And this kind of ties in with evolutionary biology a little bit too, where men can spread their seed, there's almost no risk, versus women, when they get knocked up, there's a huge biological cost involved. So this all kind of rides on that as well. So sexual activities of different couples are loosely interrelated by a marketplace, the sexual marketplace, instead of being fully separate or private, and each couple's decisions may be influenced by market conditions. This last bit is really important because that's how you arrive at Bruffelt's law. Mm-hmm. So once women get theirs, where is the impetus for them to follow through and make sure you get yours in reciprocation? So you guys, this is why I always tell guys, if you're going to have some sort of brokered arrangement, always get yours first.
Yeah, if you're going to have an overt contract, then make sure that you are holding her to that, before you're doling out whatever it is that you're going to be doling out.
And this is probably going to rub some people the wrong way, and that's fine. but we don't culture women to be loyal, and you don't get what's the saying? Bros before hoes. There's no female equivalent to this. We drive loyalty and honor and respect and all these kind of traits down boys' head. We browbeat boys over the
drill
head
it into them.
we just drill it into them. There's no female equivalent to this. They don't get the same kind of upbringing that boys get. This is why I always say those qualities are masculine traits. A lot of that's because of the socialization. So when we say get yours first, it's because if you don't, there's no guarantee that you're going to get anything in reciprocation, because once those the goods have been sold, so to speak, in the marketplace, there's no impetus to follow through on any sort of reciprocation. Mm-hmm. So the economic principles suggest that the price of sex will depend on these various things. You can read them right there below. The two ones I want to talk about just in a second are going to be the competition among sellers and collusion among sellers. Mm-hmm. But it's all based on supply and demand 101. When the supply goes up, the value of it goes down. We see this with the advent of online dating and social media, Instagram, Tinder, and all that, where the supply of male attention has skyrocketed in the last 20 years. So the value of men's attention and affection has just hit rock bottom.
Yeah, let's contextualize for a second what you mean about that. So back a generation or two ago, right? Even in the 70s and 80s, right, before the internet, women did not have followers like they do online. They didn't have 250,000 followers, right? They didn't know that many people.
Yes. And
so, we're gonna talk a little bit about how that changes. You get the 5 bullets there on the bottom. So I don't want to get too far into it, but that is the lay of the land, right? Is women have just by nature a lot of attention and from men, a lot more than previous generations of women did.
Right. And I'm going to bring up an image here really quick that kind of discusses this in more detail. We talked about this on the Discord this morning, last night, and we kind of get some examples of why. So this is really interesting. So way back in the 40s and into the 50s, the 3 most common places that people formed their relationships was through friends of the family, the women's social circle, and then school. But then you can see how this has changed. Like right here, the internet came online, got your internet dating, things kind of leveled out a little bit. Oh, nope, there's the iPhone and social media, boom, and it just skyrocketed. This is meeting online. So that's your Tinder, that's your OkCupid, that's your Match, that's all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Consequently, so meeting through friends has just plummeted. That went from almost 30% down to around 6%. So, and when people wonder why relationships are in the shitter, well, what got replaced by meeting through friends and family and all that? Meeting in bars. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it stands to reason that relationships are way less quality now than they were in the past. And we see this with the heritage study that the Teachman they did with the correlation between sexual partners, women's end counts, and their 10-year divorce risk. The more partners women have, the correlation is the higher their risk of divorce is. So the implication is ignorance is bliss. Mm-hmm. That's really what it comes down to. So what this is all talking about is that the amount of attention that women now get from men has skyrocketed. So, and I've talked about this in previous episodes where women only used to have a small pool of men to choose from, and a lot of that was given to them by family. You're going to go to the dance, you're going to meet a nice boy, that's it. Or we're going to set you up with a nice boy from church that we know because the families are all friends of the family, sort of thing.
Let me pull on that thread. Let me pull on that thread for a second there. So actually, if you pull the chart back up, I want to go through a couple of these, just point them out real quick. So the bottom line there that you had was met at church, right? And how many fewer people go to church these days, right? There's the modern culture has become more secularized. And that is what it is, right? But the landscape there is, those I'm going to call them traditional values. You may or may not agree with them, right? But those values where the whole purpose of religion was to have that marital contract of, hey, women, there are consequences. You are going to be a social pariah if you go outside your marriage, right? There are consequences for adultery. Like that clearly changed on this chart, right? The second one you see there is met through or as coworkers. Notice how this went up from the 1970s to right just after the 2000s, right? These are second wave feminism. These are women going to work, and that's fine. That is what it is. But what you need to realize is, as that peaked, and women, were calling men out for sexual harassment. They weren't tolerating those things in the workplace. Men stopped pursuing women in the workplace. They come up. Every guy's heard this. Don't dip your pen in the. I was gonna use the other one, so we don't.
Oh yeah.
I didn't want to use my one for the episode. So it's don't dip your pen in the company ink, boys. And that is because it's the Me Too stuff, right? It's like anything could, if the appearance of impropriety is there, it's going to be seen as impropriety. So all of those are trending downward, and you need to understand that as a natural landscape, and that's creating a couple different effects, right? As you said, women have all this male attention that's coming from them. I would argue the other piece of this is online. Women are pretty much overexposed sexually, over-sexualized online.
Yes.
Right. So that's a huge tangent. But the point being is, if you talk to the average guy nowadays, how much time is he spending on a Twitch stream, on a cam site, watching porn, that type of thing? And what that does is it actually rewires the way that you're engaging with women when it's an actual a conversation, either in person or virtually on Tinder or online, right? So it skews things, is what I'm talking about.
Right. And for those that are wondering where this came from, I've got the link over to the Discord over in the main chat. So head on over sometime, check it out. It's right there for all to see. But yeah, the main takeaway that we wanted to talk about right here is just to show how the things have shifted in relation to the sexual market, the marketplace, because again, it comes back to supply and demand about men's, where'd it go here? Whole thing. Yep. Supply and demand regarding men's attention, the validate, all the stuff that men give. Well, when you've got a bajillion men now vying for the same small pool of women, yeah, their value is going to go down. It's going to be.
It's going to skew things.
It's the sexual marketplace inflation. That's what we'll call it. Moving along here, we've got so competition among sellers. So the more women that are competing for male attention, the cheaper the cost is going to get. So we see this with women's lib. So now guys don't have to invest. They don't have to get married if they want to get laid. They don't have to promise kids and a house. They can just go to a bar pretty much a bar or Tinder. And if they have got a good presentation and a little bit of game, then yeah, they're going to have success. So those old barriers to entry, pun intended, are kind of gone.
Can you talk about? Can you touch on women's lib for a second and touch on what that is for people that don't know, like myself?
So this was back in the 70s, where really it's the late 60s. It's the flower child era, where with the advent of the pill, women could start having sex without the risks of getting pregnant and all the complications that arose. That's it in a nutshell. Women's liberation, second wave feminism, freedom, equality, equality of opportunity. Okay, great. But the consequences in terms of the sexual marketplace are such that women now are giving it up for free. So what's the old colloquialism? Why buy the cow if you get the milk for free? That's what's starting to happen. Bingo. And that happened throughout to about the mid 90s, where things started to change. Mid to late 90s. So before the advent of the iPhone, really that age between like around 2000 to 2007 was pretty much the end of this kind of stuff. That the picture I just had a minute ago, that was actually from an article about how millennials are having less sex now than people were 20 years ago. I find that very interesting. And again, it comes down to paralysis of choice. Most women seeing most men as below average, which, as we're going to talk about in the bell curve, that does not work that way. So competition among sellers, women want to keep the cost of sex high, so men will invest, but by themselves, not really requiring these sorts of old traditional investments by men. Things have kind of gotten out of whack. Variations in product. Well, the obesity epidemic has done some damage there. Women in, say, Eastern Europe might have more SMV of their own compared to Western women. There's variations in product globally. So if you want to get, if you're interested in higher scale markets, you might shop at other, supermarkets, like Trader Joe's or Harris Tweeter versus, I don't know, Giant. It's that kind of that kind of concept.
Yeah, Giant. I got that joke. That's a fat people joke.
Unintended. Yeah.
I like that. So my buddy actually got talking to this young woman from, I think it was Southeastern Asian country. I forget exactly which one. And he flew over there and asked her to marry him. So it is one of the things the reason I touch on this is he remarked at how different women were there. And it's just like nothing he'd experienced. And this is kind of a common trend of guys that are kind of in the red pill nowadays have been talking a lot about this of like, go where the women are basically, more of what they want, more virtuous, more attractive, whatever your ideal, kind of preference situation is. And I would caution that it's not necessarily like, yes, that's a thing. Like, obviously just go find what you want and go chase after it. But the thing I would caution is that if you're saying that, be careful not to create a buffer for yourself. If you're saying that like, American women or Western women are not worth the time and investment, or whatever that is, just be careful that you're not creating a buffer for your own rejection, and that you're not stopping yourself from trying, because there are attractive women out there. Just by the numbers, there's 354 million people in the United States. Like, there's going to be attractive women. We'll talk about the bell curve later on.
Yep. So we talked about this collusion among sellers. We're going to get that in just a second. Mm-hmm. So the collusion we talked about is, so the two big ones are prostitution laws and age of consent. They are limiting men's access to sex. You can agree with it or not. It's immaterial. The point is that it's women who voiced their concerns and made these laws happen by complaining about it. If we're going to be real about it. So that actually propped up women's SMV, their sexual market value, artificially by creating blocks in what men can and can't get their hands on. And there's other examples we can talk about this. You actually had one.
Yeah, the one note I had on here is this is why post-wall women, older women, slut shame. This is exactly why. It's a tendency of older women, and if you're a guy of a certain age, and I'm not talking about my age or Joe's age, I'm talking about if you're in your 50s, and I'm sure that the 50s and up guys would speak to this. If you're able to carry on a conversation with a younger, better-looking woman in the lower 20s range or mid 20s range, notice the looks you're going to get from older women.
Oh, they hate it.
It's the she's too young for him. How dare he? And by the way, they almost never blame the woman in that situation.
Right.
They always say shame on the guy for going after the younger, good-looking woman.
I'll bring it up again. So it's the collusion among sellers. What you're talking about. So there's some very real examples too. I want to bring this over before we get ahead of ourselves. With so think about feminists, right? It's the ones
I'd rather
who.
Not, but,
well, the context here is how women collude, right?
Yeah.
Think so. Beautiful women don't have any need for feminism. The world is already their oyster. Everybody's already going to put them on a pedestal if they don't. All things being equal, it's once they hit the wall and their looks begin to fade. That's what triggers a lot of these women that were formerly good looking to get on the feminism train. You see this with a lot of actresses. Back in the day, didn't give two shits, but now suddenly they're not getting attention and they got to change things. And it's almost always to shame women, younger women, and the men who find them attractive. Alyssa Milano comes to mind. One of the Judd sisters, she comes to mind. You see this. It's out there. You can look it up. You see it all the time. So getting back to the slideshow, so we got research findings, again, more through Roy Baumeister. Guy's awesome stuff. He's got some the links down below for his studies are top-notch. Research findings show gender asymmetries in prostitution, courtship, blah, blah, blah. You get this. Women are human beings. Men are human doings. I think it's an old Warren Farrell quote. Mm-hmm. So women's sexuality has value. Men's has utility. This is all sexual economics, supply and demand. Women are what guys are trying to buy, or women's sexuality, I should say. And then it's male providership in a lot of cases. is what they're trying to give as their economic cachet.
Yeah.
And right here, male and female sexuality, they're not valued equally, not by a long shot, wildly different.
Not even close. And
Yeah.
and we'll talk about a little bit why later, but it's how this is for thousands and thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands of years. This is how humans have been conditioned, right? To value different things in terms of sexuality. And in the modern era, this is where you get to the second bullet, which is what drives toward money equals sex. And it's not necessarily a positive outcome for culture, because you are transactionalizing sex. You are saying this is what pussy is worth,
Right.
and that's not in and of itself necessarily a valuable thing, right? I would say that it probably creates a barrier for a meaningful connection, which is, if that's what you're trying to do, then
Right. The transactionalization of sex, it has diminished the value of relationships.
Yes, meaningful connections, relationships, 100%.
Yep. And this is what I was talking about earlier. The sexual revolution, women's lib, it considerably lowered the price of sex. This actually hurts women. So believe it or not, it really, what's this, the damn meme that's going around right now? Second wave feminism, this whole women's lib accidentally and unintentionally freed men from shackles they didn't know they had. So, and then also right here, women in college and those 30 plus, again, those who are hitting the wall are the ones who are complaining about where are all the good men. They then deride the hookup culture and Tinder and all this stuff is bad. But 10 years ago, when world was their oyster, it was the best thing ever. So
that's interesting. Let me go back to a point you just made there. So what you're suggesting potentially is that third wave feminism is first wave masculism. It's not just a cause and effect.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
There's some overlap potentially, right? But I like where you're going with that.
It's an interesting idea.
We'll call that the silver lining of third wave feminism. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So now we're getting into the fantasy versus reality. So this is the fantasy. Hat tip to Rational Male, Rollo, for putting this one together. So women, get boobs, their SMV just skyrockets and just stays that way until they're like, hitting the wall, post wall. And that's not really what happens.
That's the dream that gets sold to young women.
Exactly. This is the feminine imperative, writ large on society. Now, it is true that these women are going to have men throwing attention their way throughout that entire range. But the reality in terms of what men actually find attractive is this. So women, once they basically hit puberty or thereabouts, once they get tits, until they hit the wall somewhere right around here or here, somewhere in that range, the early 30s, men are going to find them attractive. Just that's nature. But when you look at the cross cultures, men of all ages from like 18 to 80, right here in this 20 to 22 age range is what they almost all exclusively favor. So this is why we say their peak SMV is somewhere right around 22, 23. Men, on the other hand, and you can look all these studies up off the wazoo, they're all over the place. Men's SMV is not largely tied to their looks, although presentation is a big part of it. But men's attractiveness is comprised of many different things versus women's being principally the hallmarks of fertility. So for men, this is where you got to have your presentation on point, your inner game, your outer game, status. Status is huge. But by the time guys get into their mid-30s, that's where these things are starting to peak. They've shaken off all the nerdiness and maybe their social awkwardness. Now they've got a pretty hefty social circle, so they got some social proof. Their job's going, so they got some status in that respect. Maybe they got some toys. That's where it's all at, is right in your 30s. This is Mother Nature's not a feminist, okay? Things aren't equal. That's the way it is.
There's a huge reason why women that have a low SMV and have not had a lot of male attention, and women that were, that are post-wall or just have, drank the feminism Kool-Aid, there's a reason that they will try to go after a man's status and shame them and publicly shame them and actually apply consequences for guys that are seen to be having this kind of preference, right? It's the positive body image movement has a dark side, is what I'm saying, and that's you can't tell guys you should accept and be attracted to a woman regardless of how she looks, and guys respond and say, yeah, but I have a preference.
Right.
Right. Is I have a preference of somebody that's maybe more athletic, more slender. And if all of the guys pretty much have that preference, then you can't point to that and go, well, shame on all of you then.
Right.
Because we've been conditioned this way for tens of thousands of years. It's not shame on us. This is just evolution at work here.
Yep. So moving on to more of the hidden realities. Now, this is one I've been harping on for years. So, and I saw it firsthand. The best relationship I ever had, I've had a couple of them now, where we have this kind of age gap, 13, 15. One was about a 19-year age gap. I was 38. She was 19.
Let's clarify. You're not dating 13 and 50-year-olds.
No. There's that age gap of that many years. So I'm a little bit older, so I can date those women at an age range and have that actual gap, be fleshed out.
Mm-hmm.
Pun intended.
Well, the one thing on here that I want to point out is what we talked about before the show, which is that women's status will peak when they are most able to produce children, as you see on the left.
Yeah.
And on the right, men's status will peak when they're most able to produce resources.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it breaks down to. But that's not what you need. We're going to get into this in later videos. But in general, that's all true. But you should not make your game be based on your ability to provide.
No, 100%.
All right. So more of the hidden, right here, I was talking about this. The entire dating paradigm flip-flops as we age. Once you get into your early 30s, you're going to really see it. Once you get into your 40s, it is wildly different. Women are going to seem very desperate, and they're going to be in a rush. A lot of the women you're going to date, if you date older women, you're going to feel like they're in a rush. And in many cases, they are.
Yeah, biologically, they really are.
Yeah. So it's that biological clock is what's driving a lot of that.
Yeah,
so I don't think so. In the women I've dated, the oldest one I think I've ever dated was 44, and that was an experience. So I've done it, so you don't have to. Don't do it.
And this isn't just a social thing. It's not just based on men's preference. This is biological. Like women trying to have children after 30 or in their upper 30s are high risk pregnancy. You know what I mean? Like that for guys.
Well, it starts in the mid 30s, but it really takes off in the 40s.
Bingo. And it's not that can't happen. It's just that, most guys want to have kids earlier on in their life, or with a woman that's earlier on in her life.
Right. All right. So, again, settling down in your 20s is a giant mistake because you haven't even hit your peak until you're like 30, 35, 36, somewhere thereabouts. And then your SMV can be improved manually. We've talked about this before. This is what we're going to get into on the next leg of the course, picking up in 2 weeks. All right. So that first week of June, this is what we're going to get to. All right. So how to improve your presentation, your inner game, your outer game, and your status. So I think we've covered all the high marks. So far, the hidden realities. Sorry, we got one more section. Mm-hmm. So the bell curve model. And I wrote something about this years ago. And it's best if you think of it as a spectrum of women who are just not going to be interested in you no matter what you do. And then on the other end are women that are naturally attracted to you. This might be the women over here just might be lesbians. Maybe you remind them of their dad who used to beat them. Who knows? They're for whatever reason, you're never going to win them over, so don't bother trying. Then over on the right hand, there's women who are just naturally attracted to you. You are their perfect type for whatever reason. So you have to do very little to make them interested. Now, the reason I say think of it as a spectrum is that the more attractive you are with your fitness, fashion, your grooming, your natural just genetics, your looks, your height, the better game you've got, the higher status you have, the more women are going to be naturally attracted. These are going to be your so-called chads with a lot of alpha traits. So the idea is, like I said, we're going to get into this later about how to improve those things. Right now, we're just talking about the reality of the situation. So not everybody gets to be an astronaut. So some guys are going to be over here naturally, and they're going to have to do a lot of work just to get them up to even. And the most they may ever get is a 5 or 6 themselves. Sorry, life ain't fair. Deal with it. But most guys are going to be somewhere in the middle, a 5 or a 6 themselves, maybe 7s, with proper presentation, going to add a point of what they can qualify as. Good game, it's going to give them another point so they can punch above their weight. So now these guys that were like a 6 might be an 8, and we know that women date up hypergamy, so you're going to get 6s and 7s. That's realistically. Maybe you got an 8 out there somewhere that thinks she's a 7. Okay, now you're equal, and it's all in her head. But perception is reality, so that's what matters. And then guys who are 7s or 8s themselves, they get their shit together. Now they're 8s, 9s, maybe 10s themselves. So now they can have a lot of fun that the Chads had.
This is why the crazy hot matrix exists. If you land
I was
a
going to
woman
throw it in this, but I forgot how to. Yeah.
If you land a woman that's crazy hot, right? It's because her perception of you is that you are a higher status than her. And usually what that means is if she's physically just red hot, hotter than you, and she's, she thinks she's punching above her weight, usually it means that there's a lot of inner game going on. And you're gonna need to have a strong frame to deal with that type of stuff.
Yeah. And also with comments, if you guys can't wait around, if you want to like just get your comment in there really quick and then we'll come back to it, super chats are the way to go. So we'll address it like in real time immediately if you throw that out there. Mm-hmm. So just kind of put that little bit of info in the video.
Yeah, while we're plugging stuff, definitely guys, if you like this, if any of this is resonating, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We do read them. We try to cover that stuff, and especially comment on the live stream. Moreover, if your question's not answered, if you want to run some things by us, like definitely jump on the Discord after all the live streams. And then finally, if you want dedicated kind of a little bit more face-to-face time with the guys that are involved in the Red Pill, not just Joe and I, but just in general, the senior guys, then consider going over to the Patreon. Throw a little bit of contribution in there, and you get some special stuff that we can get into a little bit more depth, but it does help support the channel and stuff like that. So absolutely consider doing that.
And like I said, we do special rewards for those who help us out. Case in point, right now we've got an interview with It Is Written. So that's currently live. Tomorrow night we're going to do a private chat with our patrons. Mm-hmm. So there are bennies to signing up and helping us out. I think I talked about this on the last week's show. It's like currently right now, putting this channel together costs me about $100 a month to keep it going. So we're not making money on this. It's just to help kind of defray the costs. So that's where I'm at.
We want this stuff to get out there.
Well, there's that, yeah, but we also got to kind of make it at least monetarily neutral. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think we've kind of gotten to the end of the actual presentation. So I want you guys to think back about your goals and desires from way back in the first and second video. How does what we've just talked about tonight apply to those goals and desires? And then what about your standards and expectations? We've talked about avoiding the appearance of impropriety, screening for women. Start thinking about this stuff in terms of the sexual marketplace and sexual market value, because that's really going to drive the relationship forward. So it's going to quantify it. Yeah.
Quantify your SMV. I mean, I would write it down and go online and look for, look for the type of women that, whether it's Tinder, Instagram, whatnot, look at the type of women that you realistically, if you in real life, like you would approach them, you would be interested in having a conversation with them, and write down what you think their SMV is and where you need to get to and address that gap, right? Because if you're a 6 and you want to be dating, 7s and 8s, then you need to be at least an 8 in terms of SMV from a perception standpoint. And,
right.
And a lot of that stuff, I would say the vast majority of that stuff is things that you can do to improve your SMV. And it's not the stuff you're born with. It's the stuff that you put your work into.
Yeah, and if you're not willing to put in the work, well, fuck you. Then there's an incel community over here you can go join instead.
Yeah,
you got to put in the work, guys. Come on, don't pussy out on us. You got to put in the work, keep up, hit the gym, go out and actually approach women.
Don't be afraid of getting rejected.
Don't be afraid of getting rejected. Make sure it's women that aren't on the job who have to be nice to you. All right. Hired guns are not the way. They're good training wheels to just kind of get into the rhythm and what do they call it? Getting in state. But that's not, that can't be your actual end game. You got to go out there and approach women that you don't know, who aren't on the job, that you actually find attractive. Don't just go talk to women that you're not interested in because they're safe. You got to get over these, you got to get out of your head. All right. So I think like I said, we've come to the end here. We can go into the questions and the comments.
For sure.
Oh, Plumber, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the contribution, Plumber.
Big time, dude. All right, so we got. Let me go. There we go. So now we can see each other.
Bam.
Exponential growth. Yep. What do you mean by exponential growth? Growth of what? I don't know what
I think this popped up during the end of the chart where it talked about how people met, and it was the meeting online was just all the way up, right? After the advent of the internet.
It went
So,
logarithmic. Yeah.
Yeah, just exponential is exactly the right word for it, and it's crazy to see how that shift has happened. But the thing is, the social conditioning hasn't changed in a generation or two. Not that drastically. Like, guys aren't that different than they were a few generations ago in terms of what they want sexually. It's just not not a huge change there.
I agree. Guys are pretty straightforward. We'll just feed us, fuck us. That's really about it.
And shut the fuck up is basically the last part of that. Like, it's just quiet. Make me a sandwich and play with my balls. Is the Dave Chappelle bit, right?
That's what I was trying to get at. I just couldn't remember how he worded it.
Yeah, exactly.
So plumbers, okay, there doesn't seem to be any female shaming to control their behavior anymore. I've talked about this ad nauseum before. It used to be the parents, specifically like the moms, the dads, and the grandparents, who controlled women's access to the dating market. So they screened who the women could see, and then the women chose from the selected options that the elders gave them. Mm-hmm. That worked for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. Then women's lib came along, and the whole thing changed.
We're not advocating to go back to like the Stone Age of men owning women. That's not advocating. We're saying here that this has changed and adapt accordingly. Right.
This is the new reality. The genie is not going back into the bottle. You have to adapt and overcome. And what's Aaron Clare say? Enjoy the decline. So you've got to operate within the bounds of what reality is today. That's what the whole thing's all about. Accepting reality for what it is. That's the whole crux of the red pill. So yeah, if you're not going to accept reality, then I don't know what to tell you.
Well, and it's not the reality that you've been spoon-fed your whole life,
That's
right? It's not that just like, you're going to be a good guy, do the right things, and you're going to find a nice girl and settle down. It's not. No, you have to be attractive. You have to put in work toward being the kind of guy that you want to be. Find your mission, build some frame, and then, get some status, and then you're desirable. And if you don't do that, then you're not desirable. So be attractive. Don't be unattractive.
Yeah. And you'll know if you are or not by doing the work. You're going to go out there, you're going to approach, you're going to find out where you're at by a sort of mating. It's just the way it is. But anyways, getting back into the questions or the comments, the plumber speaks. It is a very small pool of desirable women because of the fact that the average dress size for women today is size 16.
Yeah, I love
that. This is a good one.
It's a tough one. One.
Way back in the 60s, right before the advent of the obesity epidemic, which is largely, in my opinion, a fault of high fructose corn syrup.
It's the food industry.
The food industry really threw things off.
We could go down a rabbit hole on this.
But this is one that I'm actually kind of I'm well versed in. So back in the day, in the 60s, the average height for women was 5'4", and the average weight, I believe, is 124. Mm-hmm. So the average waist size, I forget the exact numbers, but you can actually go out there and look it up. But the weight was the key one I remember. It was somewhere around 124, 126 at 5'4".
Bonkers.
Women today are now a half inch on average taller at 5'4.5". The average women's weight is 160.
Yeah, that sounds right.
It's like a 30, 35 pound weight increase. So it went from like a size 6 to like a size 16. It's something ridiculous.
It's not muscle, boys. I can tell you that.
No. So women definitely ballooned up in that sense. So yeah, he is right. There are fewer, and this kind of goes back to the slide we were just talking about before, where it's the, I think I stopped sharing the screen. It was the supply and demand and the variations in product. That's what it was.
Yep. It's a very small pool of desirable women. That's nail on the head. But then the other side of that is this a ton of supply for male attention, and no wonder women's expectations have been screwed.
Yep.
Just been skewed, not screwed. Excuse me.
A little bit of both. But yeah, they're inundated with offers. Every swinging dick is throwing attention their way. It's that whole Chris Rock. You want some dick, and that's modern dating in a nutshell. They get that from all day, all morning, noon, and night, all
starting
around.
At a young age and constantly.
As soon as they get boobs, boom, it's off the races, and it never stops until they're well past the wall. Not when they hit the wall. It's well past the wall, because you'll have a lot of women in their 30s and 40s Some can keep their looks, but even then, there's going to be guys who are just so damn thirsty because they don't have game or they never worked on themselves, so they're just throwing attention any way.
Not just attention, but actual resources.
You took the words out of my mouth. Look at these OnlyFans. Who are these idiots paying money to watch porn when they can go on these other websites and do it for free?
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense.
It's not even that. They're like sugar babies are a thing nowadays, right?
That is a little bit different because it's in person, so there's an actual personal touch. But I'm talking about like strictly online. It doesn't make any sense to me. None whatsoever. Let's see. Another factor is the epidemic of single mothers. No high-value man wants to voluntarily cook himself. I've said it before. Marrying or dating a single mother is like playing somebody else's save game. That's the best way I can put it. And I did that twice, actually. Just like I said, I've got the experience. I've made the mistakes, so you guys don't have to. Same thing with dating the 44-year-old. Her daughter was mega hot. So when I had to choose, I'm like, nah, she's got to go. I never could date the daughter because it would have been too awkward and burned the bridges. But you can't really date a single mom when you know the daughter's hotter. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, women.
Yeah, that's look. I'll say it this way: any guy that wants to, because I know of a couple guys that have actually gotten into relationships that were, maybe these aren't Red Pill guys, but these are guys that have high status and they don't tolerate a lot of BS. So let's call them just your average kind of right of center guy if you're looking at this bell curve in terms of attractiveness. And
all right,
if it's a spectrum of red pill and blue pill, a few of them have actually. One I know in particular is getting married and he had a kid from a previous relationship. His significant other had a kid from a previous relationship. And the guy just changed his mindset of like, okay, this is my son now. This is going to be our family. And you know what? If you can do that and bring yourself to do that, more power to you. It is written said on Sunday during the interview, he said, the world needs more good dads. And I don't look down on anybody that does that. But what you need to understand is there's an element there of it's going to be difficult for a single mother to respect you if you are, giving up your resources for another guy's kid. It's going to be challenging, and you need to accept that.
Indeed. I lost the. Damn it! Where's it at? Liddy.
Yeah.
Yes, Liddy.
I think it doesn't take much to be. Oh, you want to read this one? Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I like to read the comments because again, these are all getting turned into our podcast. For those that don't know, we're on Podbean on the Red Pill Media. So unfortunately, like I said, until we get some more cash flow coming in to make it all cost neutral, we can only do about 5 hours a month. Mm-hmm. So once we get a little bit more cash flow from the donations, then we can start doing it full time. So all of our content gets streamed. So if you can't watch a show or if you just like the podcast format in general because of the long form videos and interviews, then that's one way to support us. We can get that content out there. But again, Red Pill Media, podbean.com, we're on there as well. So I think that Liddy stated, I think it's that it doesn't take much to be desirable as women to a man. I agree with that. 99% of men would secretly have sex with a 4, a sub-average woman. Let me go to the first piece of this. Women just have to show up. All they got to do is not be fat and don't stink. And even then, there's going to be guys on both ends of the spectrum of the bell curve who are still going to hook up with her because guys are thirsty. Guys have wildly more higher testosterone and the sex hormones that make them have such a higher sex drive than women experience. We talked about this with It Is Written. Mm-hmm. What was it? The average woman has the sex drive of like a 9-year-old boy.
Something like that. A 6-year-old.
It was ridiculous. It was something ridiculous because of all the sex hormones involved, namely testosterone. So it's really hard for women to conceptualize just how high men's sex drives are above their own. It's like you see the memes going around about, no man is really about the, what do you call it? The nympho or the really wants sex. Mm-hmm. Oh no, guys say they want sex until they meet a woman that really does. No, sorry. Even then, I doubt it.
Yeah, the second part of this question is interesting. So 99% of men would secretly have sex with a 4, a sub-average woman. And I think that what you have to keep in mind there is, we talked about this previously, women value different things. They value the validation, the emotional validation is what they value. They value the resources. They value, if they want to reproduce, then they value, the actual reproductive capability, not necessarily the sex in and of itself. And
Indeed.
so guys do. And so what will they do? The guys don't need the emotional validation out of that piece of the relationship. So if you don't need emotional validation and you don't need, to reproduce with a woman, yeah, you'd secretly have sex with pretty much anyone that says yes for the most part, because you're not qualifying for those other things that women are.
Right. I would still don't. I would quibble about the 99%. I know he might be facetious. He might be serious.
Sure.
I would say it's probably more like 80 or 90% of guys would
Yeah,
still go out and have a drunken hookup.
Say a lot of guys.
Yeah, you see this all the time in the bars. Beer goggles, dude. What do you think? That's exactly what we're talking about right now. Guys go home with women all the time that if they really had a choice between her and, I don't know, Jessica Alba or Gal Gadot, oh yeah, they'd absolutely choose the hottie for sure. But that's not really the question. It's guys will settle if they're in a drought, if they have a lack of options. Absolutely no question about it. See it all the time. Let's see here. The plumber. I get, shame on you. She's young enough to be your daughter. I say, yeah, but she's not. I say, yeah, but she's hot. So
yeah,
this is
in response to this is in response to what we were saying about it. Older women will have a different outlook on these type of dynamics.
It's sour grapes. It's really what it is.
It is cognitive dissonance for sure.
Yep. See, Alyssa Milano didn't mind exactly what I'm talking about. She did not mind all the male attention, all the benefits that came along with that. But once she got older and guys just kind of gave her a pass because she's not their target demographic anymore, oh, well, then it became a problem. She's a hypocrite.
100%. And here's how you know it's sour grapes is these women will still go out and watch Magic Mike. These women don't stop desiring these guys that are good looking, that are just, absolutely, huge, tons of muscles, got the abs, whatever it is, these women, whatever their age range, they don't stop being attracted to those guys.
True. Now, here's one of the things too, just kind of like a little detour. Women will deride male sexuality, the male sex drive, yada, yada, yada. But you have never seen someone more feral than women at a male review or with a male stripper.
Oh yeah,
I've been involved in that market a little bit here or there. I had a party bus.
Joe was a male stripper back in the day.
I got mistaken for one a couple of times up in back in England. It was some fun times. I think I told you that story before when I woke up put in my car without half my clothes.
Yep, that is a fun time.
Yeah, it was a fun night. I wish I had my shirt back though, but it was a good one. But yeah, feral is probably the best way of putting it.
Yep.
Let's see. Come on, get with the program. Don't you know that 50 is the new 30? Again, it's this whole framing the feminine imperative. It's all lying about the sexual marketplace. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The older a woman gets when you meet her, the more baggage problems she has. Now, I've said this before, and I've gotten flack for it. Now, I want your opinion on this. So I've dated up and down the age range from, like I said, 19 to 44. And I will say that most women, their maturity level is about the same. The difference is the amount of baggage that they have. That's really the only difference I've seen personally throughout the sweeping age range. So if I could choose between a 19-year-old and a 44 or 39-year-old or whatever, one's got almost no baggage, the other one's got a shitload, who do you think I'm going to choose? Because maturity levels, all things being equal, are roughly the same. That's been my experience in the last 15 years.
I agree, and I've dated up and down the age range as well. Before I got locked into being married, so there's a lot of things to unpack as to why this dynamic exists. Because it sounds like especially for blue pill guys or guys that are new, it sounds like just a gross overgeneralization. And if you haven't experienced this and you don't have the knowledge around the stuff that we talked about literally in this video, then it probably won't make a lot of sense to you. So let me unpack some of this. When women have a lot of exposure to guys, and that's what older women do. Like they've interacted with a lot of guys, maybe didn't date a lot of guys, but certainly have talked to a lot of guys, and they have input from other women as to their experiences and are informed by those experiences. Then what you need to understand is women really get this paradigm at a fundamental level. They realize that they are attracted to guys. A lot of them, for the most part, a lot of them will will have been alpha widowed if they're not in a committed relationship or an LTR. So just if you're talking about an available woman who's post-wall, who is divorced or whatnot, then you are really dealing with, in most cases, an alpha widow. Secondly, the hypergamy piece is very real. So it does come down to cognitive dissonance, right? These women are still attracted to these older guys, right? And they're not able to actually, necessarily get access to these younger attractive guys as they would have when they were younger and hotter, if they were younger and hotter, or maybe they never did. But the point being is, it is sour grapes. It's cognitive dissonance. They can't have it, so they go, well, shame on those guys, right? There's something wrong with them. There's not something wrong with me, because that's more difficult to accept. That's going to inform their inner baggage, so to speak, right? So maybe you've been alpha widowed. Maybe you're dealing with some sour grapes of you can't have what you want, or you want what you can't have, kind of, however you want to say it. But the third piece of it is a woman is going to test your frame. A woman is naturally going to shit test you, and it's their way of figuring out how the other side of the relationship is going. So when you think about a woman who has few options, her time is running out, so to speak, to consolidate on a man, or have a lock down a guy, or have a meaningful relationship, or have resources that he's sharing with her. When you think about that, she's going to be testing in a shorter period of time, more frequently, more intensely, and she's going to be literally putting her emotional baggage on you, because she's going to need that support from a stronger guy. That's what women seek out. They seek out a stronger frame. And so those three dynamics put together is why you're going to hear that it's all summed up in that, like, older women have baggage, or alpha widows have baggage, or women have baggage. Yeah, it's not just that. It's they can't necessarily handle the baggage on their own.
Yep. In a lot of cases, especially with single mothers, that's a real thing. But you actually kind of keyed on the point that I want to talk about for just 1 second, and that's the cognitive dissonance, where you'll see, say, a woman, 30s, complaining about a guy who's also in her 30s, in her peer group, who's dating a woman maybe 18 to 22. Oh, you're just robbing the cradle. Look at this big difference in age. You're not in the same, not the same maturity levels, or you're not the same levels of experience. You're not in different places.
You don't have anything in common.
But you flip it around. They're still attracted to George Clooney in his 50s, or they're going to find guys in their 60s sexy. How is that any different? It's not. It's just that it's the rationalization hamster is all it is. Let's see. Where were we here? Liddy, where does a pre-selected man fall into the right side of the bell curve? Well, it's all kind of an amalgam of your status and your overall attractiveness.
This is a great question.
So, it's going to vary based on your own personal SMV. So if you're pre-selected, if you've got status and you're a 5, that might make you a 6, might even make you a 7. If you're a 7, it might make you an 8, it might make you a 9. It's all relative to where you're at. And here's the important thing about status that guys need to remember. It's fluid and context sensitive. So let me give you an example. If you have high status because you're a business owner, and you're going to a giant, a conference where you are an expert in your field and everybody wants your opinion on something. Not the opinion opener, but they just want your general attention and effect. We'll just leave it at attention. Mm-hmm. But you take yourself to a club that is primarily geared towards 18 to 24-year-olds, your status won't mean jack shit. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's a different environment where it's, again, context sensitive.
Yeah, what are you going to do at the club? Like, pass out your business card and be like, "Oh, I'm CEO." Like,
right? It doesn't have the same weight.
It's not going to work.
In the club scene, being the bar's owner, being the general manager, being a bouncer, being a bartender, those guys are going to have wildly more success with women because their status is sky high in that environment. It's different. So a good example, I forget who it was that told me this kind of structure. Say you get airdropped into a country, you're at a movie award show or an after party, and you don't speak the language. You can tell who is usually the highest status person in the room because they're going to be the one that has that big crowd around them. Everybody's trying to get their attention. In the U.S., it might be like Tom Cruise. In Russia, I have no idea who it would be. But if you drop me in that party, I can tell you who was the producer or the director or the star of the film. It's going to be the ones with the cloud around them like you would see with like Tom Cruise.
You crack me up with the Tom Cruise references.
Yeah, because he's like my height. So it's a nice corollary. Yeah, I'm like, gotcha. So he's my, what do you call it? He's a template for status.
Yeah,
you think of it that in that sense.
that's fair. That's the nicest thing you could possibly say about that guy.
Yeah, I don't know him personally, so I don't. Yeah, to each their own.
So I've got a story that goes alongside of this. When you talk about pre-selection and where you fall on the right side of the bell curve, it's so important what Joe says about it being contextual. Let me give you a real life example. I was actually at like a happy hour after work kind of function, and I was at a table of people that I didn't know. Like, just went up, started talking to people, couple guys, couple women, couple men at this table, and we're all having a conversation. It's very, cordial, kind of, professional level conversation, right? Over my left shoulder, there was a, let's call it late 20s, early 30s woman and a man that she was clearly at this event with, and they didn't really know anybody, and because they were just wandering around. And so I made it a point to introduce myself to the both of them, and then subsequently introduce them to everybody around the table. And I had remembered everybody's names, and so I made personal introductions to everyone and said, "Oh, so and so, da da da. This person does this. This person does that. What do you guys do?" And this guy with this young woman, she's a very attractive woman, this guy that was with her, that was clearly like her client, and they have a professional, they're colleagues, right? This guy, his title was CEO, and literally said, "Oh, I'm CEO of whatever it is." Long story short, after about 10 minutes, the body language, this attractive young woman was completely turned in my direction, was ignoring the CEO guy. And I could see his eyes were just completely wide as to why is this woman now virtually ignoring me? And that's a great example of how status can be contextual, because I knew all these people and I had this perceived value of being this, guy that everybody's talking to. The CEO title was completely irrelevant, right?
There you go. And then looks like with Plumber, you responded to Liddy. Not exactly what you mean. There will never be a pre-selected for every woman. They all have a type. Just go for the ones that are either hell yes or meeting desired women. And I really like the hell yes kind of concept. This is from Mark Mason. He's got the fuck yes, the enthusiastic desire. And we've talked about this before. You want to screen for women that desire you, not because you're going to have problems with that.
Rollo seems to think that this is the only thing to screen for, and he's not wrong.
There's a lot of folks, and this kind of talks to Brad P, the whole blow me or blow me out. You want to have very polarizing game, not overly polarizing where you're going to get in trouble, but you want to make polarizing statements, have polarizing game. This way you can very quickly screen for women that are going to be naturally interested in you.
Qualify
we talked about before. You're qualifying them for interest. Mm-hmm. You do this through having polarizing game. And if I don't have a description to models down below, I will throw it in a description later. It's a very solid book. I'd say like 80% of what you guys need to know can be gained from that book. And then the other 20% is right here, this series. Because we fill in the gaps from a red pill perspective. I don't like everything he talks about and does and recommends, but overall, it'll get you about 80% of the way there.
Well, standard caveat is like, take what works for you from this series and leave the rest.
Absolutely. I'm a huge, huge fan of Bruce Lee's, take what is useful, leave what is useless, and add what is uniquely your own.
Yep.
That's the way everybody should be approaching the topic of game, for lack of a better term.
Quote.
Yeah. Take what works from everybody else, kind of internalize it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, strip it out, move on to the next. Let's see here. Eddie says he loves it. If you don't want to put in the work, go hang out with the incel forum. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, don't be a victim. Victim mentality is just, it's weak inner game, and it's only holding you back. And
inner
if you
game
want
is right.
Like a certain amount of, look, if you're just getting started and you're frustrated, like you're going to, do a little bit of victim puking, that's fine. Right. That's part of your path to develop. But if you don't get over it and move past it or challenge yourself, then you're going to be stuck in that rut forever. And that's exactly it. You're going to be in a rut, and it's going to be a rut of your own design.
Speaking of ruts, so Plumber speaks. I say, when you aren't interested in, women you aren't interested in is a great way to practice game, because you don't care and can hone your skills. You aren't outcome independent. Well, I would say you are outcome independent because you're not interested in them in that way. You're just doing it for practice.
Yeah.
There's a benefit to that. I will say that you can treat it as a training wheels kind of concept. However, you're training so an old football coach of mine back in high school. He had a really good saying. Practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. When you start training your skills with women you're not interested in, when it's time to play the big game, you're not going to have the skills honed the way you think you are. That's the gotcha to this. It's not a bad training wheels if you're just starting and you're just trying to build confidence. Okay, that's one thing. But I would recommend you just step up your game. Go for women that you are interested in. Because guess what? If you don't succeed, who cares? Tomorrow's another day. You'll find more women.
Well, you should do both, right? You should go for women you're interested in. Here's why the women you're not interested in is important. Dread, right? If you are talking to a woman or flirting with a woman, and there is, your LTR or your girlfriend or just this woman that you're interested in, right there, standing there, then you are going to start building that status if you can have a conversation with another woman right there, and then you don't want or need if you don't want or need anything from her, and you can still have a conversation. Trust me, the dread is going to be a factor there. So that's why it's important to do that. But to Joe's point, that's not all you should be doing. And if you're just doing that, you're creating a buffer for rejection, and you're saying, you know what, I'm not going to get rejected, or I don't care if I get rejected because I'm not really interested in these women. Well, then you're not really challenging yourself because you're not going for the women that you want.
You're not stepping out of your comfort zone in that sense.
Yep.
You got to put yourself out there and not be afraid to get rejected, because that rejection, one, is always better than regret, and two, it's your failures that teach you how to succeed. If you always did things right, you'll never learn your lessons because you've never done anything wrong. So you have to make all of these mistakes, and you do that with, again, in my opinion, do it with women that you're interested in, because then it's real. It's going to have substance whenever you're trying to learn and improve. You're going to be under the gun. You're going to have that fear of loss in a sense, because you're going to be frazzled by their looks. You got to get acclimated to that, and you do that by approaching really hot women that you're interested in. It doesn't have to be like really hot women per se, but be true to yourself. And if you see a woman that you're interested in, don't pussyfoot around. Go approach them. Now,
shoot your shot.
Yeah. You miss all the shots you don't take. It's a good Wayne Gretzky, whatever the hell his name is. Wayne Gretzky's quote. Yeah.
But the plumber brings a point, which is just game everybody, right? Guys, girls, just talk to them and get them interested in talking to you.
Indeed. Yeah. Now, again, talking to everybody is awesome because it also gets you into state, to use an old POA term. Again, social skills are perishable skills. If you're not in the talkative mood, if you're not a natural extrovert, then you do have to kind of get into that mood, that mode. So talking to hired guns and women you're not interested in, just get into chatty mood. There's value to be had there. All right. So I kind of want to hop into more comments here.
Let's do it. I can read one of these. I started approaching before quarantine, but sometimes I literally had nothing to talk about for a conversation and ended up saying straight up, "Hi, I'm blank. Do you come here often? We should do X sometimes." It's going to sound clunky. It's not terrible, but it's probably not as, it goes back to one of the last videos. What was it? The 16 commandments of Poon, right? The one last video that we did, which is you are not creating excitement in that statement, right?
Right. Now can be if you're really hot, be hot, be attractive, don't be unattractive. There could be excitement just because, holy shit, this guy's hot and he's talking to me. Mm-hmm. But if not, then this is kind of a bland approach. There's ways to spice it up, and there's some polish you can put on that kind of an approach. Again, the next video in 2 weeks, we're going to start talking about that stuff. Kind of wet the whistle there a little bit and bring you guys back. But yeah, absolutely. It's not a bad framework. You can work from that. But if your presentation is shit, then it's not going to really go anywhere. And if the excitement level is really low because of that, it's not going to go anywhere.
He's got a question down here that's kind of the actual, he formulated the question, and it's, if there's nothing in the current context that you could find to talk about, what subject of small talk do you usually use?
We're going to get into that with the gift of gab. All right. So, and just to kind of give you a little primer, it's the who, what, where, when, where, and why. And then you can get vertical from there. So the who, you already know, it's going to be you and her. So you can get the open-ended questions, and then how open-ended you can go depends on how comfortable she is in the conversation and how much she's investing. So the more invested she gets, the more deeper into the conversation you can go. And again, hang in there. We're going to talk about this in a couple of weeks. All right. This is a really big one. And if you don't have the time, go over onto Reddit and look up one of the articles I had a hand in. It's called The Gift of Gab. It's in the sidebar. I don't remember what they did. It's the, I'll have to look it up the next time we take a break. Let me go back to Liddy's question here. There are men who give women money for free on Venmo for no reason whatsoever besides the woman is young and hot. 20-year-old chick. Yeah.
Go set up a scholarship program if you want to be a philanthropist, right? If you want to be somebody who actually does something meaningful in life, then don't be doing that stuff, guys. Like here's why is it's not what it costs you. It's not that it costs you $10 to give some woman something on their OnlyFans. It's costing you your self-respect.
Your self-respect, and it also blows her ego up, and it shows everybody else that they can do it, and it throws you're a cog in the machine of making things worse for everybody else when you do that.
You're thrown off the market economics is your point?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
So the plumber. Just work in the angle of the mother teaching the daughter how to treat a man. Oh, God.
He's talking about your... Okay, well, let's finish this for the podcast. All right, so just work in the angle of the mother teaching the daughter how to treat a man. That's a thing in porn now. Use it. First of all, I got to applaud the boldness, because you want to talk about generating excitement, whether it's good or bad. She's going to have a strong reaction to this, and you are giving her... Either way, you're giving her positive feels. So, like, tip of the hat to throwing that out there and just being bold. But... yeah, for sure. I would say you're really lucky if you can pull that thing off.
There are women out there that will do that. I remember a story. It was Def Leppard. So Def Leppard was seen as the nice guys back in the 80s of the rock bands. In reality, so they were giving out these special passes to the roadies and security guys, and they would bring women under the stage where they were all hanging out between sets. So they bring the women in, and they were having threesomes with like daughters and mothers, left, right, and center.
Just slaying it.
They just, yeah. So, sucks like a rock star, right? Let's see here. Let's see. The plumber speaks. Nah, women who are a hell yeah girl for a guy, they are down all the time. Ask me how I know. I think we know how you know.
I think the plumber has successfully vetted for desire.
Yes.
The woman that will break into the jail to get you out. Right, like the ride or die women, as Rollo puts it. You gotta find that, right?
Yep. Vetting for desire is huge, and you do that again through having polarizing game, maximizing your presence, your presentation, and
then again, you foster that. You foster that by having a strong frame, by having a mission, by not putting her up on a pedestal and having one-itis. All of those things.
Yep. Let's see, Liddy. Hit the nail on the head. It was hyperbole. You understand what I meant by the percentage. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Most guys will settle.
Yeah.
That's what we were talking about there.
The plumber. Tom Cruise is a template for status. Yeah, he is. He's just a 50% reduction of actual size. Now,
yes,
I feel attacked.
You feel personally attacked? Oh man.
Yeah. The good news is I'm a bit wider than he is.
You see, you got that going for you.
Yeah. I think I told you about that. Like my dad was telling me my great grandfather was 7'2". So at the time he was the tallest Sicilian in history.
Are you serious?
Yeah. All my cousins are all 6 foot on my dad's side, and all the uncles. So I didn't get tall. I just went wide.
You didn't win the genetic lottery in the height sense.
So I'd make a good power lifter, less so like a bodybuilder. I just got that frame, the stocky frame. Let's see. And of course he was just kidding. Men give each other shit and don't mean it. Women give each other compliments and don't mean it. And this is so totally true. You see this all the time. Like the women being catty by giving them the fake compliments. Then the woman goes away. Then all the girls that were around before, they talk behind their back. Mm-hmm. It kind of talks to like the duplicitous nature and how women are way more attuned to subtext than men are. And it goes back to, I think we talked about this they
communicate covertly. Men communicate overtly.
Well, not only that, and that's absolutely true. It's something we talked about. I think it was on the Rip Hill Women's Show. Women speak almost 3 times as many words in a given day than men do. Women, it's about 20,000 words a day. Men, it's about 7,000 words a day.
which is why I feel like I need to amend one of my statements from last week. I said one of Mike's rules is 90% of what a woman says, don't take it face value. And that doesn't mean just completely ignore it. What that means is there's something there under the surface. But I would argue that if things are going well, I'd start at 90%, right? 90% don't take it at face value, because she's going to repeat the stuff that makes it that's really important, and she's going to find other ways to send that message. And if you really have that ride or die girl and she respects you and she desires you, and you know you're getting what you want out of the relationship, and you want to move it down from 90%, feel free. But that's just my metric.
Yep. So you're getting through the questions again. So Liddy, in your opinion, how much do you think good tattoos elevate a man's status? Now, I got some polarizing views on this.
Do you?
It's going to depend on the woman. That's first off. Two, you got to define what's a good tattoo. Some women might like sleeves. Some might like neck tattoos. Who knows? So it's all going to be relevant to the women. But you're starting to trend into the dark triad territory. And the women that you're going to pull with a lot of tattoos may not necessarily be the quality of women that you want long term. That's one of the things that I've seen personally, where women that like tattoos are going to tend to have tattoos. They're going to tend to have impulse control issues.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's where
they're going to tend to think of themselves as commoditized.
There's a lot of correlations in that realm.
But so to correlate it back to the question here, do you think good tattoos elevate a man's status? And I think that, let me try and find the nuance in your comment here, Joe. I think what you're saying is it doesn't necessarily have a impact on the status directly, but you're broadcasting certain things. You're broadcasting that dark triad piece of, don't give a fuck. I'm going to write all over my body, and I don't care what you think, or if you're not going to hire me for X job, I don't care.
Right. And who knows? Maybe a lot of tattoos, it is a status thing, especially if they're into a culture where they value a lot of tattoos.
Yeah, that's true.
And you can replace tattoos, whatever the widget is. It's cross-cultural. It works across the board. Plug in whatever that widget is, and that can give you status in that niche. So, or they are going to, like you said before with the dark triad, tattoos kind of trend in that direction. You want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll read it. So failures are the best learning experiences in life. 100% agree here. I've never learned from my successes, only failures. It's interesting, like, forget about women for a second, just set that aside. When you talk about guys getting to know people, I have a ton of respect for the guys that are divorced. I have a ton of respect for the guys that have been fired from a job, because it means they took risks and it means they did something, right? I don't, the guys that have the perfect life that, never, they were, and I'm going to pick on, no disrespect to accountants here, but I'm just going to pick on what is perceived as a boring career, at least to me personally. The guy that's an accountant that drives a Toyota Camry, that's not an exciting guy that I want to be friends with. Certainly he's probably not exciting to most women. So I think that those guys that have had failure in their life, that have had kind of those big ups and downs, they're going to, as a result, they're going to have a stronger frame. They're going to be more exciting, because they're going to have more life experience. So it goes back to this chart that we've got of, women have more baggage. And I dug into that a little bit earlier. As they get older, men actually have less baggage as they get older, emotionally speaking.
Yep.
Right. Like fair seas don't make a strong captain, is I guess what I'm getting at here.
It's an interesting quote. I've never heard that one before. I like it.
I just made it up. Boom. There you go.
All right. So the plumber, talking to everyone in an environment builds social proof. It is how I do the lone wolf and still get attention, because I'm building social proof right in front of the women I'm interested in. This is exactly what we're going to talk about in the upcoming videos about pre-opening the venue, where you're going to talk to some of the bar staff. You might talk to the people in your immediate vicinity. So when the people that are coming into the bar after the fact, they're going to see you already being social and people being accepting of your presence. That's the key.
Oh, it's so key.
Yeah. So you're building social proof, and those the perception of you being the social butterfly and people liking you. Let's see, tattoos really limit your options to a small demographic of women, and tattoos are for life. Absolutely agree. apparently we've hit the end of our comments. I do see we've got a
That's it.
ton of live viewers, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Again, if you guys like this kind of content, hit the like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell. After this, we are going to head over to the Discord server. The link is down below in the description. Also, we are on Twitter, so please hit us up, follow, subscribe, whatever you got to do, because we throw out updates and all that. Now, I was just reviewing also the poll we did about a week ago on the times. So,
Yeah,
as you
sure.
guys, as you might know, if you don't know, we usually air the show at 11. Last week we tried 5 p.m. This week we're trying at 7. The next time that we've got in the poll is 9 p.m. So I think that's what we're going to try here in 2 weeks when we pick this back up. If there's any other questions, we'd like to hear them right now. But yeah, I don't think there's much more to add to the conversation. How about you, Mike?
No, I think we cover a lot. Again, it's just a lot of theory.
It is.
Still looking forward to some upcoming episodes. We got a couple minutes. Do you want to talk about some sneak previews of stuff that we want to cover?
Oh yeah. So presentation. We already kind of did the preview during the slideshow.
Mm-hmm.
The presentation portion is going to be your outward looks, basically your fitness, your fashion, your grooming. If you're not taking a shower every day, you got to fix stuff like that. If you're not brushing your teeth, God, Jesus, please brush your teeth.
Wash your ass.
Wash your ass. Yeah, do the basics. And there's a lot of guys out there who don't do this. I've been to these conventions. I've smelled them when they walk past.
Disgusting sons of...
Use your deodorant. Oh yeah. So that's one thing.
But it goes down to control the controllables, and we'll talk about that later. Yeah. I am still I'm putting this on the schedule for at some point whenever it ends up on the schedule. But I still want to do a deep dive on some of the topics that we talked about last week, which are like the mission piece. We talked a little bit about frame control, but I don't think we did a deep dive into there are components of frame, there are an order of operations to these things, and then how you find your personal mission. Actually, I already said that. Dread is the third one. We have not talked about the Dread ladder, and if you don't know the Dread ladder, you are doing it wrong, boys.
And I'll tell you what, 2020 is shaping up to be the year of frame. It seems like every time I turn around, someone's coming up with another YouTube channel, and they're making it all about. It's a lot of stuff we've been talking about for 3 months now.
Yeah,
and others have been talking about it probably far longer than we have. But yeah, it's frame is important. You've got to understand it. If you don't know what it is, go back, watch the previous videos. We've defined it. We've talked about it again. And then we're going to talk about, like you said, Dread. We're going to get into these individual topics in deep levels later on once we get through the SMV portions. So I think we're going to call it there. We are going to head over to Discord, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks. I am moving next week, so I won't have internet. So 2 weeks from now.
Next week, though. We do have a video for next week.
Well, that's going to be the interview with It Is Written. So if you want to watch it now, you can head on over to Patreon. Links down below in the description. Sign up for, I think it was the premium subscribers, $5 a month. And you can go watch that. We got all the Red Pill, much of the sidebars already in there as well. So we've got benefits in there for you guys. And then again, tomorrow night, our premium subscribers are going to get a private, I don't want to call it a coaching call. Yeah, we're going to have a private session with our Patreon subscribers tomorrow night at 7 p.m. So again, 2 weeks from now, look for us at 9 p.m. and we will see you then.
See you, boys.
All right.